Hi everybody, I'm Sarah Reed and I work for an organisation called Tiney. We're a childminder agency and relatively new in the early years sector, but lots of us with lots of experience in the early years sector, and we're particularly talking today about why childminders are uniquely equipped to support families, or support families always, but obviously looking at this time during the pandemic. So as I say, my name's Sarah Reed, work for Tiney. I've worked in the early years sector for a number of years. In the start of my early years career, many years ago when my own children were very young, was as a childminder, something I very much enjoyed doing and have been passionate about the early years sector in general, worked across different parts of it, but particularly a passion for childminders, which is why I chose to join Tiney as well. So this is just a little bit about Tiney. We're an early years organisation founded by the team from Teach First. We're supporting a new generation of childminders to create successful home-based businesses and give more children high quality early years care. Up until now, we've been working with new childminders, so people who want to become registered as a childminder, and we work with them to support them through that process and get them registered. We're now looking at ways in which we might be able to support existing childminders as well, and hopefully some of this presentation will be useful if you're a childminder, but also if you're working in other parts of the early years sector, just looking at, really some of the experiences during the pandemic. I'm talking particularly about childminders and why they're in a unique position to support these children during the pandemic. But there's certainly some things that are relevant across the sector. In some ways, it's tricky because the early years sector is open for business and we are working with these children, so obviously that comes with its own anxieties, but really fantastic that we are able to work at this time and we are able to provide really useful support for families and their children. So childminders in particular in the pandemic, the two kind of factors that I'm going to speak about this morning are them being well placed to support families because of the small kind of bubble style settings. That word bubble has appeared in our vocabulary a lot more perhaps than it ever used to. It used to mean things that you kind of blow and they make pretty things in the air, and now bubbles are groups of children, aren't they? So it's funny how language evolves when something like this happens. But childminders providing those kind of small bubble style settings, but then in addition their ability to be able to focus on the individual needs of the unique child, because of those small settings. So looking first of all at the small bubble style settings, parents, they're seeing the benefits of using a childminder. They're seeing the fact that they've got the opportunity to for lower infection rates because excuse me, having some issues with the technology, apologies. So it's smaller numbers and lower infection risk, and because there's fewer parents entering the setting. So this is on this kind of slide is around the sort of practical side of things. Childminders, our Tiney childminders offer high hygiene standards. We work with them. We've got policies and procedures in place on keeping standards high in that area. And for parents, it's also easy to see how things are kept clean. And how that setting is cleaned on a regular basis. At Tiney, we also offer opportunities to use alternative Tiney childminders if a childminder is closed because of illness, because of the pandemic. We can offer parents alternative support, which is quite a unique opportunity for Tiney childminders and for parents using them. So looking, I suppose, in more detail, that's the safety aspect. But what I really want to talk to you about today is the kind of the unique child kind of thing. The current climate that we're in at the moment. So just from our experience and the experience that our childminders are facing is that parents are facing and experiencing a range of feelings and emotions. There's this guilt. It's probably guilt both ways, I guess. Guilt, should I take my child to a nursery, to a childminder, to an early years setting? because of the risk, because of the dangers, but also, you know, the guilt that actually it's really difficult having them at home, and sometimes it's easier to take them to a setting. So experiencing those different emotions there. And of course, children picking up on those. We know that children from a very early age will pick up on emotions and how someone's feeling, and they'll react. Even small babies can understand and know that there's something going on, something feels different. And of course, the same goes for children as well. It depends on how old they are, but they'll have different levels of understanding as to exactly what's going on. And they'll be, you know, they'll ask a lot of questions about the pandemic, about what's going on, about, you know, why are mum and dad at home more often, or why do I have to isolate, all those kind of things. Routines have become very different for all of us, haven't they? And you know, adapting to that, and children do thrive with a good routine. So when that's different, that needs to be adapted, and that can be tricky too. And so for children who are going into earlier settings, often everything else is kind of different in their life. There's all sorts of things going on. It doesn't quite feel right, but then they go into their childminding setting or their earlier setting, their nursery, and things feel very similar. Things feel normal for them, which is really important for children's emotional well-being and for their resilience. A lot of parents are at home more often than usual. And that, again, that brings that dilemma of, should I take my children in? Should I keep them at home with me? But, you know, the parents often are working when they're at home, and so need that support from their early years settings. So childminders are well placed to teach our children important lessons about self-awareness and about the normality of experiencing a range of feelings. And towards the end of this presentation, I've got a few slides that I'll share with you, just some of the techniques that we use and our childminders use at Tiney to help children with their kind of resilience and experiencing different feelings. So this, I always hark back to the early days of the EYFS, when this was these principles into practice, of which the unique child is one of, has been part of the EYFS since 2008, since it first came into being. And those of you who've been working with the EYFS since that time will remember that everybody got a lovely pack with cards in it that demonstrated this. But now we just have the documents that are sent out of the EYFS, the statutory framework, not quite so fancy and pretty, but this still is very important and is still an intrinsic part of the EYFS, those principles into practice. And this first one, the unique child, every child is a unique child who's constantly learning and can be resilient, capable, confident and self-assured. So when we're working with children, we need to understand and observe each child's development and learning, assess progress and plan for next steps, support babies and children to develop a positive sense of their own identity and culture, identify any need for additional support, keep children safe, and value and respect all children and families equally. And again, so I want to just kind of focus on this for a minute and think about how important it is that we don't lose this when we, you know, the EYFS has had many incarnations since 2008, since it first came in. But I think this is just so central to the entire document and the entire kind of framework that we're working with in early years, and just remembering those unique children. And again, you know, I as I say, I'm talking from the perspective of childminders this morning, but certainly across the early years sector, I've seen so many examples of excellent practice where practitioners really tune into children, really listen to them, understand them, and identify when there are issues and difficulties, and in a really sensitive way work with parents and sometimes with outside agencies to support that. And so I think we need to remember during these times that actually we know the children really well, but they may have been away from our setting for periods of time. As I say, all those factors that we looked at in the previous slide come into play as well. The fact that this child may behave differently sometimes, may be struggling a bit, and we're really in an excellent position to be able to support them and to be able to help them and work through any of those, you know, the struggles and issues that they might be having at this time. So it's absolutely, you know, as I say, difficulties around the practicalities of working during these difficult times, but actually for children it's so beneficial that early years settings are open for business and are working and are supporting these children in such a wonderful way. So childminders specifically, at Tiney, we really foster the need for supporting the unique child. So we work with our childminders to through kind of our ongoing support, through our training program. We have an online training program that's obviously we got up and running during the first lockdown, and has been growing in strength from strength to strength since then. A new way of learning perhaps for a lot of us, but certainly has been really beneficial for our childminders. But we also offer support to our childminders through our visits to them. We carry out visits, obviously not when we're in lockdown, but at other times we can do that. And we really foster these kind of benefits for our childminders. We want them to build strong relationships with children and with families. And I think childminders are really well placed to do that. I think they've you know, they develop really good one-to-one relationships with the children, because because that's small bubble style setting, they have less children that they're caring for, and so are able to do that. But also really strong relationships with the families as well. I know when I was a childminder, as I say, it was a number of years ago, but certainly I worked with not just the children but with the families as well, and I still have you know, relationships with many of those families that I used to work with, which is fantastic. And they still talk about, you know, the support that they got from that childminding setting. Responsive interactions. I don't know if any of you were at my talk yesterday, but I was talking about the importance of children being able to regulate their feelings and behaviour. And one of the most important ways that we can support children to do that is by ensuring that we have responsive interactions. So, you know, when a child gets upset and frustrated, we talk to them, we name their feelings, we talk about what it is, and we respond to them appropriately. We talk to children, we're on their level, we do all this often quite naturally, but really tuning into that unique child. What is it about that child? What is it that presses their buttons? What makes them happy? What do we want to avoid because we don't want to upset that child? And we really get to know them. And again, childminders are uniquely placed to be able to do that, and really have some wonderful interactions with children. I mentioned yesterday, and I'll mention again, the Harvard Center for the Developing Child. It's an American website, but it's really useful. They coined the term serve and return interactions, and that's the interactions where a child, I don't know, babbles or cries or makes a noise, and immediately the person who's interacting with them, the practitioner, the parent, whoever it is, responds appropriately. And so it's almost like a game of tennis or ping pong with the interactions. But I'd recommend looking at the Harvard Center for the Developing Child website, and that will give you some really useful kind of resource and information there. Childminders also provide safety and security for their children, and at Tiney, safety and safeguarding is really one of our highest priorities. We make sure our childminders are safe to work with children. We carry out lots of checks to enable that to happen, but we also make sure our childminders feel confident that they are able to offer a safe and secure environment for the children that they work with. So through things like knowledge of how to keep children safe, knowledge of child development. Child development is really important in terms of children's safety, isn't it? Because you need to know what level what's an expected level of development for a child, so that you know that if the behavior that they're displaying is normal or whether it isn't, and you can work with that, and obviously, you know, be able to address any issues, and obviously, you know, safety on a practical level at times of COVID, making sure that they've got cleaning products in place and hand sanitizer, and making sure those risk assessments are carried out as well. So again, something that childminders do very well. Really important, promoting independence and resilience. I won't go into that too much on this slide because I've got a few slides after that talk about that a bit more. But independence and resilience are skills for life. All the things we work with children in the early years are really important, and it's just such a vital time for children, isn't it? And everything we do enables them to develop into the future. But I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about promoting independence and resilience and how we do that at Tiny. And providing a welcoming environment where children can thrive. A lot of parents choose childminders because of that home-based care, that, you know, that home from home feel, and you know, it provides a really nice, secure environment, I think, particularly at this time, for children in their early years. So interactions, first of all, and as I say, mentioned those serve and return interactions previously, but having real conversations with children. So, you know, talking about what they did, but also telling them about what you did. Children get really excited that you're a real person and you have a real life too. Possibly not at the moment during lockdowns, not that much going on, but you know, they're really excited to hear what your favourite colour is, or, you know, what you did at the weekend, as well as telling them about telling you about what they did. And let the children lead in conversations. You know, let them have a chance to hear their voice and know what they're talking about. Problem solve with children, not for children. One of the ways to build resilience in children and to support them in that way is to problem solve with them. So we're often very quick to jump in and just, oh, they can't do that, it's frustrating, let's just do it for them. But actually, enabling them, helping them to, I don't know, do up the zip on their coat. You might do the first bit for them and they pull up the rest. That's really much more important, so that they learn these skills and develop them. And they learn how to problem solve, because that, again, that's a key skill that we need to learn in life. Giving children space to struggle. And sometimes that can be a challenge. And obviously, I'm not talking about, you know, throwing tantrums on the floor or really like getting really frustrated and cross, but you know, letting them use trial and error, letting them build a tower and it fall down, and see what happens, and giving them time and allowing them to do that. We all have times when we need to, when we do struggle in life. The time that we're in at the moment is no different, you know, but again, giving children the opportunity and space to do that. Role model how you face challenges. You know, children learn so much from the adults around them, don't they? And so if you're facing a challenge, talk to the child about it, let them know and understand how you face it, and let them teach you as well. I learn so much on a regular basis from children, and they are quite awesome and amazing. So just, as I said, I wanted to just quickly talk a little bit about resilience and independence. And again, this is something that we really hold dear at Tiny, and something that we really foster within our childminding community. We think, again, that childminders are very well placed to provide this. And for everyone across the early years sector, I think it's really important that that we are able to retain these skills for future learning, for navigating all of the challenges in life, as it says there. So we do this in different ways at Tiny. These are just a few of some examples that we work with our childminders to do. So when we're setting boundaries for children, you only need a few simple rules. I have been in settings where there's kind of long lists of rules, and also what I wouldn't want to see is lots of don'ts. Our rules, when we say a few simple rules, we say what we say, not what we do, and they are positive. So we are kind to each other. We sit at the table to eat. We look after our books and toys. We keep our feet on the floor in the living room. And some rules are more important to some than others. You know, for some people, they wouldn't necessarily, for some childminders, they wouldn't necessarily want children climbing all over the sofa and pulling the cushions off. For others, they might think, well, that's okay, they're going to make a den, and that's perfectly acceptable. So thinking about what's important in your setting, working with the children if they're old enough to help set those few simple rules. But you know, 4 or 5 is probably plenty. You don't need more than that, because children will get lost after that. So think about what's really important, and think about how you can frame them in a positive way with the children rather than don'ts. Childminders, as I say, I've worked across the sector over the years, and this is not to the detriment of any other part of the sector, but this is my experience of childminders. They do accept children very much as they are, and so going back to that unique child, they really ensure that uniqueness is fostered in every child that they're working with. They really develop some great connections with the children they work with, and as I say, I know this from my own experience, because I've seen some of the children who were babies and toddlers when I used to work with them all those years ago, and they're adults now. Some of them tower over me, and you know, I've still got great connections with those children, which is amazing, and my own children do as well. So, and they work to gain trust with the children and families that they work with. I think, you know, particularly during this time, it's really important that we take on board everybody, the fact that everybody is feeling this in a different way. Everyone is experiencing the pandemic and the lockdown and everything that goes with it, the kind of the fears and the anxieties in a different way, and it's really important that we work to understand that and gain the trust with the families, and you know, and have those conversations as well about how you're feeling. You know, that you understand that you may have to make changes, and you may have to adapt your setting because of this, and ensuring that parents understand that as well. Oh, sorry, I didn't move the slide on, did I? Apologies. That was the one. Move on to the next. Sorry about that. And things that are important to our childminders at Tiny, things that they've told us, and things that you know, we again really want to foster, tailoring that provision to the unique child, remembering children's uniqueness, and that really is the beauty of early years, isn't it? And I mean, I could talk about so many anecdotes of lovely children that I've worked with, and some of the things that they've said and done, and I'll always hold on to those, and that's, you know, that's why we work with children, isn't it? So that we can see their uniqueness and we see them develop, see them grow. It's amazing. Blending free play with some adult-led activities. So the EYFS asks for a balance, and we at Tiny think that's really important to keep that balance, and have lots of different activities, some that are led and some that are free play. Planned purposeful play. I think that's again, to coin a phrase, but that's really important, isn't it? That why are we making these plans? Why are we doing this? What's the learning outcome for this child? What do we want them to get from it? What do we want them to understand from this activity, or this experience, or this trip or outing that we've provided? And that positive relationship between childminders and the families that they work with is really important. I think childminders on the whole generally have a really good working relationship with their families, and families really trust and rely on the childminders that they are working with. So I've left a little bit of time because there might be some questions. Unfortunately, I can't see the chat as I'm talking, so I'm going to go into the chat and just see if there are any questions now before we finish off. Oh, no, it doesn't look like there are. So if you are interested in finding out more about Tiney and what we do, please go to our virtual booth to read our prospectus, chat to one of the team, or drop us an email. As I say, we've up till now, we've mainly been working with our kind of new childminders, new people who want to come into the market, but we'd be really interested to hear from existing childminders and find out more ways that we may be able to help you going forwards. Lots of really exciting training that we deliver, as I say, on an online basis at the moment, but we hope that may change going forwards in the future, and we may be able to do some more sort of face-to-face. We do a lot of webinars as well, around all different aspects of early years practice, and in particular as I say, I yesterday was talking about children's self-regulation and their behaviours. We do lots of all sorts of different things. So if you are interested in finding out more, then please do get in touch. I'm also happy to answer any questions that anyone has based on this, or anything else that you've heard or you're interested in. And just so if you do have any questions following this webinar, please do drop us an email at community@tiney.co. So, well, I'll finish there then, as there isn't any questions. But thank you all very much for your time. It's been really nice to be here this morning.